Appreciate that introduction and hope everyone's having an awesome day today. Good morning to you or good afternoon, depending on where you're at in the country. Today I'm in Miami, Florida, which is my hometown. And I'm excited to spend just a couple minutes with you just discussing some of the things that we do at the Learning House and some of my experience around how connecting enterprise and higher education creates success. So let's just dive right into this. And as Katie mentioned, if you have questions, feel free to send them in. I'm always interested to hear what your thoughts are and how we might help. So I can't promise we'll get to all the questions today, but we'll do our best. So over the last couple of years, if you've been in higher education for any time at all, it's likely that you've heard about some of these huge opportunities that have occurred out of corporations and higher education institutions coming together. Some of those deals include the ASU Starbucks deal that happened in June 2014. And since the launch of that program, ASU has enrolled about 2,200 Starbucks employees into the program. Starbucks designed a plan called the Starbucks College Achievement Plan. And basically, they're covering full tuition costs for, between the tuition reduction that ASU offered and Starbucks tuition coverage, they cover the full cost of a four-year program. And through that process, it gained a lot of immediate attention. And I know for me, it was definitely on my radar and something we talked a lot about once the deal happened. Likewise, you may have heard about the Georgia Tech and Udacity and AT&T as they teamed up to bring really a low-cost, highly affordable master's degree, one of the lowest cost, I think the lowest cost master's degree in computer science. And it gained a lot of attention to the point where President Obama even mentioned it in one of his addresses to the nation as he was highlighting the need for more affordable, more accessible education. And so they came together, and part of the reason behind that was really this drive for AT&T to find better talent. They were wanting to increase their talent pipeline. And in the article here that I got snapped on the screen, highlights that only a small percentage, I think it was about 200 students, 230-something students came from AT&T, and the rest of the students, of about the 1,300 students that enrolled in the initial period, came from other organizations or were unemployed at the time. But AT&T was very interested in increasing or getting access to these employees or these potential employees for their talent pipeline. You might have also heard about the Forbes and, from Forbes, you might have heard around Chrysler and Strayer University when they came together and partnered to offer a similar program. And their CEO, Al Gardner, was quoted as saying that their program was actually better than the Starbucks program because they didn't require people to be reimbursed. They paid right up front. But their whole goal for launching this program was really to attract more individuals into their sales positions at Chrysler. And so I want to just share a little bit today around, as you've heard about these, what is it that we can do and why are these things happening, and how can you leverage the fact that these types of deals are happening out there to impact growth in your institution, to impact success, to gain brand awareness and other things. So I want to share a little bit about why companies and corporations are making those steps to move in that direction. But before I do, I want to take a moment and just highlight why it's valuable for your institution. And I know many of the things I'm going to share here are very obvious, but I think it's good to remind ourselves of this. So why is it valuable for your institution to consider pursuing B2B partnerships and community partnerships? And one reason is because there's a lot of tuition reimbursement dollars in the marketplace. Companies are, over the last couple years, since the recession has ended, if you will, and the competition for talent has continued to heat up, more and more companies are reinstituting their tuition reimbursement policies, and some of them never let go of them. But there's about a little over $21 billion that's invested in tuition reimbursement. That number's from a couple of years ago. Beerson used to do a study each and every year on that, and since they were purchased by Deloitte, they keep that a little more private. But there's a lot of money out there. There's a lot of companies investing in tuition reimbursement so that they can attract or train and develop their talent. And so that's a great stream of potential revenue for your college or university. The other reason why is that about 71% of companies are offering tuition reimbursement. So it's not like there's these rare and large businesses that are offering this. This is really a pretty common practice. In fact, you know, lots of mid-sized organizations offer some level of tuition reimbursement. So it's not just for the Fortune 500 companies or the elites, but 71% of companies offer some sort of tuition reimbursement. So there's a lot of opportunity to start pursuing these types of relationships. In addition to that, obviously, as you develop these partnerships, there becomes a good opportunity for new enrollment streams. As you've seen with ASU and Starbucks, I mean, I think anyone on this call from any institution would gladly accept, you know, 2,000 new students into their program if they were qualified and ready to go. So that is a massive enrollment stream. Obviously, the ASU Starbucks deal doesn't happen overnight, and those are few and far between, but there is a lot of opportunity still as you start to find those. What's interesting is that in many cases, not in every case, but in many cases, the quality of the students that you will receive out of these programs tend to be higher. From my experience of over a decade, you know, we've seen conversion rates from 7 to 20%. And if you compare that to some of your other channels of where you are generating prospective students from, I would say that channel, you know, any channel that's converting above 7, maybe upwards to 20%, it would be considered a good channel. But in addition to that, you see an improved persistence rate. These students tend to stick around longer. They have higher motivation to graduate. They feel a little more sense of responsibility because their organization is helping to fund it. And, you know, we've just noticed over the years that there's typically a higher persistence rate for these students. So all in all, you get a lower cost per acquisition for a student, and you get a higher lifetime value. And that's a great win when it comes to your marketing initiatives and overall the growth of your institution. So I want to talk a little bit about why it's valuable for the corporation itself. But before I do, I just want to pause and see if there's any questions on anyone's mind before we move forward into this part.
Yeah, Jeremy, we have a question. One of our listeners asked, how do you project or forecast the number of students you might get from a potential partnership?
How do you project or forecast the number of students you might get from a partnership? You know, that's a great question, and thanks for asking that. You know, there's not a hard science around it, but you know, there's a couple of ways that we go about doing this. And my team at Learning House, we use a pro forma tool that helps us evaluate all this stuff. And some of it's science and some of it is a little gut. But there are a couple of things. One, you're evaluating, is the deal exclusive or not exclusive? Because obviously that's going to impact the number of students you might get out of a deal. The other thing is, you know, do they have tuition reimbursement? Because not every company that you partner with will have tuition reimbursement. But if they do, obviously the more that they offer, the better. And the more they offer, you tend to see, not in every case, but many cases, a parallel influence on the higher the tuition reimbursement amount, the more students will take advantage. And then if they do have a tuition reimbursement policy in place, what we tend to do is go back and see how many individuals historically have taken advantage of that. And just as an example, you know, Starbucks, they had, prior to launching this program, they had a couple of non-exclusive relationships with other for-profit institutions. And so they had some historical data that I'm sure they went back and looked at as they re-engineered their program. But if you look at Starbucks, for example, they had, you know, 140,000 at the time. I think now it's closer to 190,000 employees. And to date, they've had about 2,200 or so, give or take, students actually, or employees enroll in the program. And so if you do the math on that, that's about 1% of their employees. And think about that for a second. 1% of their employees took advantage of a program that was promoted by their CEO, got a lot of media attention, was heavily encouraged within the organization, and covers almost where there's almost no out-of-pocket cost for the student, 1%. And the reason I share that is because some people, you know, say, well, I'm going to sign a partnership with this organization, and they have, you know, 7,000 employees, so we're gonna get a ton of people, and that's just not always the case. There is some math behind it, and historically, what I have seen, sorry for the long-winded answer here, but historically, what I've seen is about 1 to 5% of a company's organization is going to take advantage of a tuition reimbursement policy. Now, there's obviously exceptions to that. If it's a niche group, you know, if they've identified that, you know, this is a management-only program and we're going to give $10,000 for select people to go through a management program, then obviously that's slightly different. But those are some factors that we weigh out and try to get a guesstimate / estimate forecast around what we think a partnership will produce. So great question. Any other questions?
No, I think we're good right now. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you for that one. All right. So what's the value proposition for the corporation? Why are corporations looking for partnerships like this? And before I advance to the next slide, I want to take a moment just to give a little plug for our Connect conference. I'm actually going to be hosting a panel discussion at Connect. So if you haven't got your Connect conference tickets, I'd encourage you to do that. And at the end of the webinar, I've got a friend code that I think we got available that just for joining the webinar today, we want to extend that to you. But I'm going to be hosting a panel discussion with some executive chief human resource officers or chief learning officers or other executive talent managers or learning leaders that will be there to share this exact answer. Why do you partner with institutions of higher education, and what's your criteria, and what do you hope to get out of it? And I think it's going to be an awesome session. So if you are coming to Connect, check it out. We'd love to see you there. If you haven't signed up, we'd love to see you sign up and be there. I'd love to meet you in person. So what's the value proposition for the corporation? Well, you know, I kind of alluded to it earlier on, but there's no secret that whether you believe it or not, there is this tension around talent. Some people have called it the war on talent over the last several years. And I've unfortunately been in many rooms where there's a debate on, is there really a war on talent, where are hiring managers just more picky and they don't know how to train? I mean, there's all kinds of discussion. But the point is, regardless of your perspective around it, there is this perceived or real war on talent that creates pressure on how do we attract better people to help give us a competitive advantage in our market space. How do we develop the talent we currently have so that we can, you know, be leaders in this space, or how do we keep the talent that we have? And this issue of talent attraction, retention, and development creates this interesting storm, and lots of companies are looking for answers. And fortunately, they are looking in some cases, and in many cases, looking to institutions of higher education as one provider of solutions. So it's creating an opportunity for your institution and others to step in and really provide a meaningful solution. And what are they looking for when they evaluate these programs? How are they, what's important to them? Well, I've noticed, you know, over the last probably 4 years that these programs for educational partnerships are becoming more and more focused and narrowed, and really the company for the first time in a long time is starting to say, we want a return on investment. This isn't just dollars we throw out the door. For many years, they viewed this type of partnership as something similar to what they would do with cell phone companies, where you know, if you've ever worked at a corporation, you might have got a 15% discount from AT&T or Verizon because you worked there, or maybe you got a discounted membership to a gym, or you could get some sort of benefit at a college partner. And so many of them didn't view this as a strategically aligned program, and so they didn't evaluate return on investment around it. But now they're realizing we're putting a lot of money, over the last several years, they've realized we're putting a lot of money into this, and let's try to maximize the return on investment. So how do they do that? What are they looking at? What are the factors? Well, those factors, first and foremost, is graduation. Even with the Starbucks ASU example, early on they realized that their employees needed more support than what they had anticipated. And so there were several of them signing up but not starting, several of them starting but not continuing through and persisting and retaining. And so they've worked through looking at different models to add in student success and retention support. And so at the end of the day, they don't want to just invest in a couple classes. They want, in many cases, they want their employees to be able to graduate, and graduation is one of the first milestones of return on investment. So if they invest this much money, X number of dollars, how many students graduated for X number of dollars? And then based on those who graduated, how many of them stuck around for a certain period of time, and then how many of them got promoted? And really sophisticated organizations that are ahead of the game are starting to do this better and better. And one of the companies that we work with is Cigna, and they've done a great job over the years of finding ways to not only measure this, but improve this, and finding programs to align their graduates out of this benefit with leadership opportunities that they can eventually promote into. So, that's important for you to think about as you're approaching these organizations. So there's a couple other things that are important to them as well. How does your program or programs, how do your programs or certificates or badges or whatever it is you're developing, how do they support their learning development initiatives? And that's something we've worked to do more and more of over the last several years, is figuring out what is it that what are the outcomes, what are the learning gaps, the skill gaps that the organization is trying to fill, and then make sure that we're unbundling. I know that's a kind of a key term these days, but unbundling our degree and packaging it in a format that is consumable by whoever their target audience is. And just one example of doing that is, a retail management organization that's interested in a retail management certificate, and if you have a retail management, a bachelor's degree with an emphasis in retail management, just take the 3 or 4 courses that have the majority of the learning outcomes that they want, package it together and offer it as a certificate that you can leverage into a full program for those who want to continue on. In some cases, these organizations already have a partner. They're just they're looking for opportunities to expand partnerships. Many organizations, the for-profits have done over the last several years a good job of creating these partnerships. And now I've seen a trend where many of these larger organizations are trying to find nonprofit options, and they're moving away the for-profit partnerships. And that creates an opportunity for them to expand options and for you to possibly be a part of that offering. And then one of the last things, but still just as important, that companies are looking for, they want the opportunity to get some brand recognition. And part of that was, what AT&T did with dropping a couple million into the program with Udacity and Georgia Tech. It became great brand recognition. Lots of people heard about them. It was some of the best advertising that they've gotten. And I just pulled a little quote here that says, just talks about that they paid $2 million for a 30-second ad in the Super Bowl, and what they received out of this was much more effective. It was related to goodwill. So, large organizations, they want to be seen as cutting edge. They want to be seen as, really thinking outside the box around how do you attract, develop, and retain employees. And so if you help them put together the right kind of partnership, it really can lead to some incredible opportunities. So jumping on to the next slide, there's really 4 critical practical tips that I just want to share. They're more process-oriented, but things that you got to consider as you're developing partnerships if your organization decides to pursue that. And number 1 is alignment, and don't underestimate the value of alignment. Alignment is extremely, extremely important. For instance, if you're a liberal arts institution and you're partnering with an organization whose CEO or leadership has at some point, been quoted as somehow being not that excited about liberal arts institutions, you're setting yourself up for trouble. And so early on, we try to find alignment around mission, alignment around their vision, or alignment around key initiatives. And alignment is very, very important. So don't underestimate that. I know sometimes I've seen it happen over and over where, an institution pursues a company and there is an alignment. They spend, 6 months, in some cases a year, putting together something, and then it doesn't work because there's not alignment. So that's very important. Secondly is just, you got to know why. What's in it for them? Why are they doing this? Obviously, you know what's in it for you and your institution, all the stuff we talked about earlier, but why is it really that they're doing this? Is it a key initiative, or is it just a benefit that they want to offer to employees, or is it, specific to a region? Why is it, and what are they trying to accomplish with it? And you'd be surprised how many times these types of partnerships are developed and no one really knows the why. No one got to the why are you doing this and why is this important to your organization. And then one thing that we always do before the launch of a partnership is an engagement plan or a communication plan. And we'll sit down for about 90 minutes at least and go through details around how are we going to communicate it, specific dates. We put together basically a launch plan and an ongoing communication strategy. Those are typically, anywhere from 3 months to 12 months long. We look out as far as we can, and we don't do it. We don't sit in our office and do it. We get in a room with the client and plan this out together. We look at company events, company meetings, company communications, newsletters, all the different ways we can communicate it, and we put together a plan and a strategy to how to execute that. And then we come back quarterly and we update the client and we refine the strategy. We refine how we're getting the message out. We evaluate, is it meeting the needs of why they signed this? Is it meeting our needs of why we initiated the partnership? And so just that quarterly check-in, highlighting, number of inquiries, highlighting number of people who applied, highlighting actual starts, people who are still in the program, if you've been at it a while, how many students have graduated, and maybe the sources. Are there certain departments that are bringing better success than others? Are there certain ways that you've messaged that have, if you sent out an email, got better response than when you put up other communications, maybe in a break room or in an info meeting or something. So just evaluating all that is very, very helpful. I want to pause real quick, see if there's any questions, and then we'll move on.
We do have a question.
Okay.
It says, if you're new to corporate partnerships, how can you communicate ROI to prospective corporations or partners?
Yeah, that's great. So, you know, I think in the past, we've tried to fabricate, and I want to be careful saying it that way, but we basically tried to invent ROI. And there is legitimate ROI. It depends on the partnerships, not the type of partnership you develop, and I'll get to that in a moment. But there's a couple ways. So in all the organizations we work with, we always say there has to be an incentive. There has to be an incentive. And that incentive for us typically comes in the form of some sort of tuition reduction, say 5%, 10%, whatever it is, 20%, it doesn't matter. And in the case of ASU and Starbucks, ASU significantly brought down their tuition costs to meet you know, Starbucks, and Starbucks redirected their current plan and reorganized their current plan to cover a significant cost for their employees. And together they came up with a no-cost solution. And so as far as ROI, you know, the easiest way to project ROI is the number of students that are taking advantage of the program and the amount of dollars that you saved. You know, so if you offer, let's just for easy math, 5% or 10% tuition reduction, and your cost per credit is, you know, $400 an hour, $400 a credit hour, that's $40 per credit, and times the number of students per that term or per that year, and you can kind of come up with an ROI projection of what you have saved the company. But, you know, as I mentioned earlier in the previous slide, I think the ROI really comes down to the longevity of the program, which is how many students are enrolled and then ultimately graduating, and then how many of those are sticking around. Because the companies, at the end of the day, like, yeah, they appreciate the fact that we're saving them some tuition dollars. But the reason why they're doing it, you have to tie the ROI back to why. And if they're doing it to retain talent, then you have to tie the ROI back to how much talent they've retained. And that's a long-term proposition. That's something that you have to help the decision maker understand early on, that if you're in it for retention, then it's going to take a while. We can evaluate how many term over term are retaining, and for every student that comes through a term, that's, you know, essentially another, you know, 3-4 months that you've got them working for you. So maybe there's some ways to tie in ROI there. But there's at the base, the most basic I can boil it down to is we always tie ROI back to their why. We always tie the ROI back to their why. So why ever they're doing it, why they wanted the program, that's where we start when it comes to determining ROI. So hopefully that helps. Any other questions? If not, we'll move on.
Yep, that's all for now. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, so types of partnerships. That was a perfect segue into this last, this next slide here. So there's a couple of types of partnerships, and I've mentioned a couple of them here already, but I want to just highlight them. So as you're thinking about it, it really is not a one-size-fits-all. And me and one of my directors were talking the other day about kind of if you're into sports, you might have read the story about how Under Armour stole away one of Nike's recruits. And basically, I think it was Steph Curry. They had Steph Curry in the room, and they basically had repurposed a PowerPoint presentation for Kevin Durant. So they took Kevin Durant's PowerPoint that they built for him, they put it in front of Steph Curry, and instead of catching all the changeovers, they accidentally left one that said Kevin Durant, and obviously that was somewhat insulting. And so long story short, Under Armour stole away Steph Curry, and he's worth about $15 billion now to Under Armour's enterprise, and so it was a massive mistake. And as we were talking through that, you know, we were just kind of uncovering the lessons there, and the lesson is that, you know, you can't treat every organization the same. And I've seen so many times where institutions of higher education have kind of a one-size-fits-all approach. They approach every organization the same. They think every organization wants the same thing. That's just not the case. And so I encourage you to really think even more broadly than these couple of points I have here on what is best for the organization. Your institution is unique, and the company you're trying to partner with is unique. So together you should come up with a fairly unique looking program. And, you know, there are similarities amongst many programs, but I think consider how do you make it unique to the two organizations. So just a couple quick highlights. Number one, this is the basic tuition reduction. So this can be a flat dollar fee, you know, a $2,000 scholarship that you're offering exclusively to this partner. It can be a 10% a percentage baseline, but there needs to be an incentive, regardless of what it is. In most cases, I highly encourage always having an incentive. And I've had institutions push back and say, well, you know, we're already affordable, or, you know, we don't want to be discount you. And I get that, and I agree with that. At the same time, you have to realize that you're spending money in marketing. And in this channel, part of the value of this channel is it reduces the amount of money you spend in marketing. Doesn't mean you don't spend any, but it significantly reduces the amount you spend in marketing. For instance, the average cost per lead through many sources are going to be somewhere between $150 to $200, and we've seen them upwards of even as high as $1,000 a lead. Cost per lead through a typical partnership tends to be somewhere between $40 and $55. So it's much more affordable. So there's plenty of margin in there for you to provide your incentive. And so the basic tuition reduction ends up being part of your marketing spend, and I highly encourage you to consider that. Next is articulation, and when people see that, most people think of community college articulations. Those are good. We've had a ton of success with those. One of our partners gets about 15 to 16% of their enrollments through our community college pathway partners. But that's not exactly what I'm talking about. I'm talking about corporate training articulation. Many of the corporations out there, organizations out there, they have training that they've developed in-house or somewhere else that you can review. And obviously, if you've been in higher ed for any length of time, you know ACE does this, but you don't have to wait for ACE to do it. Your institution can do it on their own. You can get the learning outcomes, you can get the syllabus, you can work with the organization and tell them what you need in order to evaluate it and make sure that they get it there. And then you can evaluate it for, you know, whatever is appropriate, whether it's, you know, 1 credit hour or 9 credit hours or whatever it is. But that creates a real incentive for employees. It shortens the length of time that they have to go to school, because it will reduce, in some cases, the number of classes they need to take, and it reduces the cost. And so those are 2 wins for the individual if they're deciding. So, you know, I highly encourage you to always check into articulation options with training programs. Next is customized programs. And when people hear that, they just think, you know, big dollar signs, and it's not really as complicated as it sounds. It can be, and in some cases it should be, depending on the partner. But a customized program can be as simple as taking your core program, and instead of using Harvard Business Review case studies or something that you buy from Pearson, work with the partner to come up with a custom case study. Maybe they already have it. We've had an incident recently where one of our partners had a case study that they were already using to teach other people in their organization about some of these concepts, and we put it right into the appropriate class, and that helped to customize it just enough. So finding opportunities how to customize specific courses based on the company's needs. It could be, again, mentioning earlier, unbundling of your degree. Are there 4 courses? Are there 3 courses? Are there 2 courses? If you put together, create a certificate, that could be a co-branded certificate of company XYZ and your institution that's meaningful to that organization. That becomes what I call a revenue per lead. We talk a lot about cost per lead. If you're in marketing, we talk a lot about cost per lead. What are revenue per lead opportunities? And sometimes creating these smaller packages where a company can promote and sometimes even pay for themselves a badge or a certificate, and then you generate a lead out of it and try to convert that lead over into one of your full programs. Another one is employer hiring network, and for those of you maybe from a career services standpoint, you're obviously familiar with this, but that's a great place to start. In many cases, your career services team's already working on these, but if you're not, that's a great place to just start the conversations. It's basically zero-grade entry into the world of partnerships. There's talent attraction and retention, and that's really just how do you, that's the 3 examples I led with. Starbucks and Chrysler and AT&T were all looking for how do we attract better talent? How do we keep our talent longer? And so when you can come up with solutions targeted at that, those tend to be the most lucrative and most value-added partnerships to the organization. And then last is more a consideration than a partner type, but it's just consider exclusive versus non-exclusive. Neither one is right or wrong. They both have their place in different ways, and so you just have to consider what that looks like. And, you know, in many cases, the organization is going to push you on non-exclusive, and you need to decide if you want to do that. And you know, for our exclusive partners that have high tuition reimbursement, that have a high opportunity to yield new students, we'll sweeten the pot. We'll give a better opportunity. We'll give a better preferred pricing. We'll customize an extra course. We'll do whatever we need if we want to keep that exclusive. So a couple simple ideas for where do you start? You know, if you're just starting out, where do you start? And how do you create better synergy and alignment between the partners you maybe already have or that you want to have? And here's just a couple of simple things. One, you know, we often look for opportunities of how we can hire faculty, adjunct faculty from the company. So if they have someone who is a master's CPA and we have an accounting program, then we'll see if we can make that connection if someone, you know, at the employer wants to be an adjunct faculty and they qualify, and obviously, you know, we don't just put people in, but as long as they qualify and it's a good fit, we'll do that, because what happens, you create an internal champion, someone who's excited about both institutions, and it creates a lot of synergy there. We look for employer projects, and this is where, you know, if you got a computer science program, maybe their IT department's been working on a database challenge and they could use some extra hands. And so grab that project, put it into your one of your IT programs to have the students work on. And then, you know, have the managers or the CIO come over, speak to the class for a second, maybe present an award to the winning group that solved the problem the best way, the most effectively, let them take them to lunch, whatever. Starts to build synergy between the prospective partner and you, or the current partner and you. Do workshops and seminars. We have one of our clients at Learning House, their organization is a Strength Finder organization. Everyone that comes in, they teach them Strength Finder, they do the Strength Finder, they talk about Strength Finder, it's part of their culture, it's part of who they are. And it's something that they do seminars actually for some of their corporate partners. They'll take Strength Finders out to them and teach on that. But you don't have to be a Strength Finders organization. You can teach whatever it is that your faculty, your staff, your administration, or whoever you put over may have specific topics, everything from organizational development, leadership concepts, team building concepts, or anything else in between that might be useful for the company. Find connections. It blows me away. Every time I talk to institutions who are just getting started, they're like, well, you know, we don't know where to start, and we don't know, who to talk to first. And the fact is that in most cases, you're part of a large institution, and you guys have all kinds of connections that already exist. In your career services office, your faculty members are married to someone who works somewhere. And so you would be surprised to find out if you just put together a list of, say, the 10 organizations that you wanted to target and start to circulate that amongst the staff and administration and faculty, who knows someone and who can make a connection. And in many cases, your faculty is already working with some of these organizations. So I think it's actually very easy, and I highly encourage you. I'm always surprised at what comes out of the connections that already exist and how it can accelerate some of the conversations to get to partnerships much quicker. Find scholarship offerings. We use scholarships quite a bit to create urgency. We'll say we're offering, for summer, we're offering 4 $1,000 scholarships for any student who starts over summer. And it creates urgency, and it, you'll get, obviously, in most cases, you get more than 4 students who are interested. You might get 10, you might get 50, you might get 100, who knows. But it gives you a lot of leads that you can talk to, and a lot of prospective students you can talk to, engage with, and then you award the scholarships. And it gives you, it helps build your pipeline very quickly. And then, similar to what I shared again with ASU Starbucks, this is, a great opportunity if you can do it, is match their TR. So if one company is offering $5,000 in tuition reimbursement, maybe you offer a scholarship that's $5,000, and maybe it's not for all employees. Maybe it's for, 10 employees, the first 10 to enroll. I don't know. But you got to think of creative ways of how to position what you're offering. And obviously it depends on how strategic versus how benefit-driven your partnership is. But this is exactly what ASU and Starbucks did. They matched each other almost on the program to provide almost a zero-cost program for Starbucks employees. So anyways, that's the presentation for today. So I just want to kind of wrap it up. Thanks for being here. Thanks for listening in. Any questions that we have out there, this is your chance to make comments. Some of you on here may have better answers than I have had, so feel free to share any comments you have or any questions you have. We're excited to hear.
We do have a question, Jeremy. It says, how can our institution ensure we're offering the right programs to meet the needs of these corporations? Is it about tailoring your offering to organizations or finding the right organizations to fit your offering?
Wow, that is a great question. So, and I don't, I think that is an individual institution decision. The programs are critical for sure. I mean, the programs, with the wrong programs, it doesn't matter how much corporate development you do. If you don't have the right programs, then you're going to struggle. So you have to have the right programs, but assuming that you have and your institution has done the market research and you have the right programs, then obviously I would say you want to go first where you have programs that align. You find organizations. If you have, a healthcare program, then focus on healthcare organizations. If you've got a CJ program, then focus on CJ partnerships. And and I know I'm just keeping this very simple here, but I would say lean into where your programs already exist, because it takes a long time. It takes a little bit of time to develop new programs. That being said, I do think it's worthwhile, and we do this quite often. We're always looking at how do we build programs that speak to the marketplace, not just from a student standpoint, but more specifically to the employer. We view our outcome as not graduation, our outcome is students getting employed. And so, and I'm sure most of you on this call have the same view. So I just think, you know, that is an individual institution perspective. However, use what you got in your arsenal today and see what you can develop out of that. And if you have zero luck or little luck, then yeah, you have to go back to the drawing board and see what you can drum up. And you'll be surprised once you start having these conversations and just making it known in your community that you want better alignment between corporations or organizations and your institution. There are individuals in almost every organization that are thinking about, man, I wish we could do this type of a program, and your institution may be the perfect fit to help them build that type of program. So you'll start to, once you get your kind of the word out, you'll start to have some organic opportunities flow your way to develop and build certain things. So good question. Any other questions?
Yes, there's a question that says, what would you suggest we provide at a first university exhibit that would attract employees to your table?
At a first university exhibit. So I think, I just want to make sure I got the question right. I think what you're asking is the first time that you exhibit at the organization that maybe you're partnering with, what do you put out to attract students to their table? And, you know, again, I hate saying it, but it does depend on where the organization is, the types of employees, and, you know, the roles of the employees, and, you know, is it a factory, is it a retail center, or whatever. But, you know, some of the things that we always do, we're doing less and less, I will say we're doing less and less of the exhibit-oriented events. And because, you know, that has been very saturated over the years, and it's used to, you would put up a little exhibit, and you guys can, you've probably been someplace where you've seen this. You put up an exhibit, and people wanted to come by. Today, you put up an exhibit, and people are like, oh, great, I don't want to be sold, and so they avoid it. So, you know, we're doing less and less of those types of events, but we do have seminars and other things. But back to the question, what we will typically put out is, you know, anything from pins and swag, little giveaways and tchotchkes that, you know, will attract students. We have information on the programs. And, you know, we try to come up with creative ways, just working with the partner to attract people. So at community colleges, you know, we'll have people sign up for our newsletter, and they get a free coffee from their cafe. You know, that's just a way to engage community college students earlier. In some places, if we're doing a theme, you know, if there's like a back-to-school theme of some sort, then we'll, you know, have some little something that ties back to that. So I don't know if I'm answering the question well, but I would, you know, we're actually moving away from that more and more, just because we found it to be the leads we generate there are they don't convert as well as leads from some of our other events that we do, such as seminars, webinars, email blasts, etc. So. Good. Any other questions before we wrap up, Katie?
Yes. If this is a new venture for an institution, what is your recommended step one?
Recommended step one is, if I just were to group it into one step, it would be set up your operations. And what I mean by that is make sure that your team has a philosophy on what this means, and that they're in agreement around what this means. Because if it's you by yourself, then it's a long uphill battle. So I encourage that you have a meeting and you get your team all on the same page around, this is what we're going to do. We're going to focus on these types of organizations, and we're going to offer, you know, whether it's customization or scholarship or tuition reduction or whatever it is, that you get on the same page, because that has implications. If you're offering scholarships or tuition reduction, obviously, you know, your financial aid office needs to be involved. How are you going to tag those students and flow those through? Your enrollment team needs to be involved, because how are they going to talk to these students when they get them? So I would say initial step is just get alignment with some other people in your organization. Assuming that has happened, you know, get a brand together. You know, the brand that we use here is called Partner Plus. And so we've got, you know, a little microsite, we've got some collateral, and we just start getting in front of companies and saying, hey, you know, we are looking to partner with enterprises like you, with corporations like you, to figure out how we can help you with talent development, talent retention, and talent attraction needs. And so wanted to have a quick conversation and tell you what we're doing and just figure out what you're doing, you know, and don't spend an hour talking about you or your institution. In fact, we spend a little bit of time. We have a whole process, and maybe we can do a webinar on that, but we go through this process called the High Five, that we just get the client talking about their initiatives, their challenges, you know, where they're going, their goals, and we take all that information and we can leverage it to bring back to our team and put together a proposal for what we could do for that company. So hopefully that helps. Any other questions?
Just as Jeremy, as we're waiting for any other questions to come in, can you share a little bit about the Connect session this year and that discount code that you referred to?
Yeah, perfect. So as I mentioned, you can use the code TLHFriend and receive a $150 discount. So Connect Conference, for those of you who don't know, we host it. Learning House hosted. It's in Louisville, Kentucky this year, July 20th and 21st. It's packed full of just great information about this and many, many other things. And I encourage you, grab one of your colleagues and sign up together, come out, hang out with us in Louisville, and you'll get a lot of great feedback, a lot of great information and industry trends and ideas that you can take back to really take your institution to the next level. And just for being on here with hanging out with me for the last hour today, you know, we're giving you the discount code for $150. So we'd love to see you out there. If you have questions, you can go to the website, learninghouse.com/connect. It has the agenda, it has the speakers, it has the breakouts, it has everything you need there. And if you still need help, you can email me, you can reach out to Katie. We're always here to help. So anything I missed there, Katie?
I think you covered it well. Thanks, Jeremy.
Awesome. Any final questions?
I think that that wraps it up. We did, I think we covered everything. Thank you very much.
Okay. Well, sounds good. Well, thank you so much, everyone. Really, really appreciate the time. Appreciate all the good questions. I hope it was valuable and helpful. And you see my contact information up there, Jeremy Walsh at learninghouse.com. You can reach out to me, and happy to help however I can. And I'm also on LinkedIn if you want to connect with me there. But anything we can do to help, would love to. Otherwise, have an awesome day. Hope it's a great week, and we'll talk to you guys at Connect. Thank you so much.